Hey, good afternoon or good morning or good evening or good whatever stupid time zone you're in. So happy to have you all here. And it is Friday, the 31st. All Hallows Ween, I guess, as they say, right, Eric?
Oh,
Eric,
yeah. That's why I'm wearing my orange.
I see that. I'm wearing my black. I don't necessarily do Halloween. In fact, I'm actually a bachelor as of this morning until late Sunday night, so I can do what the hell I want, kind of,
There you
sort of.
go.
But I do have a checklist of stuff that she left. So, yeah, anyways. Do you do it like, I don't know, I don't want to be presumptuous. You have kids or nieces and nephews? Do you do like any Halloween kind of thing?
I
Or
do have a son. He does have 4 legs and fur all over his body, but
perfect?
he's my son. And I think my girlfriend dressed him up as the Cat in the Hat and took some pictures, and he had his ears down. He was not happy, but he looked beautiful. But no kids. But we are very much dressing up and going out tonight on the town.
That's fun. That's fun. I'm gonna shut off all the lights, lock all the doors, close all the blinds, and the candy that my wife left for the neighborhood, I'm just gonna binge eat myself. No, kidding.
Good for you. We
Oh,
love that.
I'm kidding. No, I'll certainly have an opportunity to see all the kiddos. You know, years ago, our neighborhood was like one of the most sought after. Like we would get like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Like it would not. I'd go through like 10 bags of candy. But the last 3 to 5 years, we barely go through 2 bags. I feel like trick or treating isn't as big of a thing anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, I tell you, growing up, and I'm a '90s baby. We were lived in a neighborhood where we had a neighbor that had all the big candy bars, so everybody came to them, which meant that they came to us. And my mom always underprepared, and she always got not enough candy. So then she'd send my brother and I out, and then we would go trick or treat to get candy for more kids that needed to trick or treat because she didn't want to turn anybody away. And then at that point, the candy was gone. So I definitely grew up in a neighborhood where like people would drive to our neighborhood to drop their kids off. I live in an apartment complex now. I think we talked about putting candy out, but we actually have a decent amount of kids that live here. Our development here, it's more like businesses, and it was cool. They had like a candy trunk or treat type of thing.
Trunk or
and like,
treat.
that was awesome.
A lot of people do trunk or treat thing. I grew up in the city, well, kind of halfway, like Lowell, Massachusetts. So, you know, we would literally like get 4 or 5 pillowcases full of candy. I mean, this is in the 70s and 80s where you didn't have to worry too much about crazy people doing crazy crap. So, but yeah, it'll be fun. You know, I'm gonna try to make a run over and see my granddaughter in her Halloween costume.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but hey, you know, let's dive into it. Why don't you take a minute and make sure I have my thing here, and why don't you take a second and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Well, hello. I'm Eric Levitas. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at ControlCase. ControlCase is the big bad auditor at the end of the rainbow, right? We're the big bad. We're Bowser that Mario needs to go and fight at the end, right? So when you guys, whether you have a compliance standard or a regulation or a framework that you're trying to align to, and somebody says, well, somebody has to come in and assess you, a third party. I'm the third party. So, you know, Tim's a phenomenal partner, and we all play a pivotal puzzle role in this crazy compliance world. We are one piece of that compliance puzzle. We are a professional services shop. So yeah, it's been a journey, to say the least, Tim. It's been pretty wild for me.
Oh my goodness, the big bad auditor coming in. You know, it's funny because people tend to think about compliance, you know, as this like scary thing. You know, it doesn't have to be scary, right? And I think that's, you know, that's kind of where, you know, our jumping off point is. It doesn't really just like, yeah, it's work. You can't automate your way or checkbox your way through it, because when you get the Erics on the other side and the control cases on, like, they're gonna dig in, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, it doesn't have to be scary, even though this is I don't know, spooky Halloween, right?
I'll tell you, Tim, I tell everybody, compliance doesn't have to be a scary, crazy grizzly bear. It is still a bear in some instances, but you can make it a fun bear. But like to not take compliance seriously and to not build out your program and to not cut corners, shame on you, right? It's like, and at that point, why bother, and at what risk, right? So I always, I feel like I say that every day. Look, it is a bear, but we can make it a fun bear. It's still a bear.
And imagine that feeling at the end when you get through and you get your big shiny badge and your bragging rights and oh, by the way, you are a little safer, a little more secure, a little more defensible, right? It's not just about the badge. I mean, that's important, but you're actually a little safer, a little secure, a little governed. Oh, speaking of governed, I should probably do my introduction too.
Yeah.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Tim Golden, founder, CEO, all things around ComplianceScorecard.com, where we help MSPs have the risk conversation with your customer. That way, when the audit comes, you have the people, the process, and the platform to be able to connect with the control cases and the Erics and the auditors. So really excited about today's topic. I think it's an important one, much like has been posted in the comments, right? Being able to understand where all of these components pop in. So we're so glad to have you here, Eric. Now, for those of you watching in the audience, thank you so much. Evan, I see you. Darren Deep, I see you as well. There's a bunch of other people on the live stream. Feel free to pop some questions into the chat so that we can tailor this a little bit. I don't have to stay on script, right? So Eric, let's just dive into the first topic: aligning your GRC workflows to auditors' expectations.
Yeah, I mean, look, I tell everybody, and I run into everybody you could think of. The first thing is, and forget the auditor at this point. Who's asking for this, and why are you doing this? That is like, it sounds so juvenile. It sounds so basic, but a lot of people are, oh, well, actually, we have this, $5 million contract that if we don't get SOC 2 certified, we can't bid on anymore. And it's like, okay, $5 million. When do you need that by? Oh, well, this date. It's like, have you paid somebody to get ready? And so it's like knowing the who and the why dictate my part, right? Because the first thing I'm going to ask you is who's asking for this? That is the first thing I'm always going to ask you. The second thing I'm always going to ask you is, have you engaged somebody to help you? Do you have the tools supporting you getting ready? Do you have a third party outside of yourself? Do you have anybody on staff that's done this before? Those are like the most basic questions I'm going to ask to validate, are you ready to even talk to me? Because the biggest challenge actually in our world, and maybe it's not, it's obvious, or maybe it's not so obvious, is people being unready. And we're actually, in some instances with some of these frameworks, and again, there's 1,000,001 frameworks, from the rigorous CMMC and FedRAMP ones to maybe I hate to say less rigorous, but unfortunately that is how they exist, is like the PCIs and the HIPAAs and the GDP and the GDPRs and things like that. All of these frameworks come with rigor. All of these frameworks, there's an assessor at the end of that rainbow that has specific controls that they need to assess, and they need to check, and they need to validate that you have both technical, administrative, all these things in place. And if you don't even have the why and the what, you're never going to get to the point where we could figure out that you are good. And it's tough, because it's heartbreaking for me to say, somebody says, hey, I need SOC 2 type 2 by December. Can we get that done? It's like, no. Have you got, what's your trust criteria? What's that? I'm like, hey, we're a little bit behind here. So I think just getting the right team around you and knowing the why really makes the conversation with me that much better. And then it'll help you build your big puzzle. And I want to talk about that puzzle with you, Tim, because like we are pieces of the puzzle, right? So like, I'd love your opinion. Like, I guess the same question back to you. It's like, what are you seeing on the front end before people even get to me, of like where they're like, what good GRC looks like?
So, obviously we work with MSPs. So I'm going to put my MSP hat on here, right? I should actually just buy a hat that says MSP, because I say that way too often. So, when I think about, and I want to agree with you like you need to understand the business case first, right? So we talked to a lot of MSPs, a lot of their end customers, and being able to like, we have to do the whole company against FedRAMP High now. Well, wait a minute, hold on a second. FedRAMP High, who's asking, like you said, what's the actual requirement? Now, I get it. There may be a business case where you might not be able to bid on work. You might not be able to retain that existing customer or get new contract work. CMMC, all those other things down the road. Yes, there may be legal and contractual requirements in the business case around that. I always talk about my friend has an amazing veteran-owned distillery here on the seacoast of New Hampshire. When COVID hit, the byproduct of distilling was, high grain alcohol that he would dump down the drain. But when COVID hit, he could turn that into hand sanitizer. So instead of throwing something away, he made hand sanitizer. The local military base was, Air Force base was like, hey, we need it. He started selling hand sanitizer and providing it to the local military base until they said, by the way, sign this contract that has a DFARS clause, a CMMC clause. No, business case wasn't there. So I love your idea of make sure the business case is there first and being able to justify that across the entirety of the business. One contract, 2% of your income, probably not a great idea. But being able to determine the scope in the business case around even moving down a path. So, Eric, I totally agree with you there. When I think about the alignment component, as we were just talking about, in the beginning here, the workflows and the auditor expectations, and we'll dig a little deeper into that. But first, I think let's both agree that there is a business case to do this. And then from there, what do we do next? Right? You mentioned pro services and audit. What's the next step? Yes, 95% of our customers are in the defense industrial base. I have to do CMMC.
Yeah. My answer is always scope, 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 scope. Scope is the most important thing, no matter what framework, no matter what regulation, no matter what anything is. How, what, and why is this information flowing through your environment, and who is at risk and who needs to be in scope, and aligning with either a third party or professional services to figure out that scope. And then every decision you make from there on out, every buying decision, every technical implementation, every piece of documentation lives within that scope. I've seen far too many people jump into, well, I know I at least need to buy the Microsoft suite. I know I at least need to do this and update this tool. And, I've got 100 people. I'm just going to buy 100 licenses and all is good. And it's like, oh, we're going to buy this tool and this and that. And it's like, hold on. Now then you find the right person, or maybe you get to my door and I'm like, whoa, you thought way wrong about that. You're going now backwards. All your money is gone, unfortunately, to waste. All of your money is now, you don't know where to restart. Scope is the most important, and make every buying decision within scope. And then within that scope, make sure you align. And again, whichever framework you decide to go down. And I think, again, a tool, a platform makes your life easier to navigate I think of it like a bus path with different milestones. It's like, you need to know how to commit both internally and externally on when you think you're going to be done. And you need to be able to prove that in real time, that you have both the administrative expertise and the technical expertise locked down in one place, that you can get with me and say, hey, I'm not going to make the assessor's life hell. We don't have documents over here, over here, over here, over here, and over here. And I think John in finance has it. And I think Joanne in finance has it. And it's like, whoa. Like, my advice is always make the life of your assessor easier. And it starts with validating scope, and then it's building within that scope, always and forever. I will never fault from that statement.
Yeah. So again, continuing on the workflow concept, right? So does this apply to the business, or who's asking? What's the business case? Great. We can agree on that. We have a business case. 95% of our work and our revenue comes from the Department of Defense. Great. That means we have DFAR clauses up the yang, which means we need to adhere to CMMC. Awesome. Business case. As you just suggested, Eric, next step. What is actually in scope? The number of OSCs or OSAs that or end customers of an MSP, those needing certification, whatever the acronym is now, I think they're called OSAs now, right? They want to scope the whole thing. It happened to me 4 or 5 years ago. I was working through a customer and they're like, we're going to scope everything. And I'm like, really? Yeah, I don't. And I failed to do a solid scoping exercise. At some point, I just had to stop and regroup and look at a data flow diagram, a CUI diagram, what do you have, where is it, and define scope, where we went from 120 people to 2, because all they had was FCI, right? Not the stuff anyways, the point that I'm trying to make is I'm agreeing with the concept of make sure you scope appropriately. And for those MSPs listening, that starts with identifying where the data is, where the data goes, who touches it, and most importantly, who really has to touch it. Just because there's 150 people in the company doesn't mean everybody has to touch the data. We're talking specifically for CMMC, that would be different for SOC 2, ISO, or other legal attested frameworks. But that scoping and getting that right and getting the workflows around that in the very beginning, it sets the stage for everything else that flows through this idea of the workflow to getting to the auditor, right? And so step 1, does this even apply? Step 2, is there a business case? Step 3, conduct some data flow. I think we can kind of all agree this workflow, does it apply? Is there a business case? Conduct scoping exercise. And then from there, I think that's when we can start to bring in the auditors, right? I like to bring the auditing firm like yourself, like ControlCase and yourself, in on the beginning of this conversation as quickly and as, at the start, so that we might change a little bit of the scope. We might adjust a little bit of the things. When we went through our SOC 2, I made the mistake of looking at everything, including the privacy stuff, which, 3 or 4 months in, realizing that was probably a bad call. But we're a compliance company. Of course, we should do every management domain and build our management assertion around everything, including privacy. I should have brought the auditing firm in way in the beginning, because we would have talked about, does privacy really apply? I mean, yes, we have email address, but I'm not collecting way more than that. Sure, GDPR is important. California privacy is important. But I should have brought the auditor in way sooner. So
yeah, what's funny? It sounds like a sales tactic, and it's like, oh, bring me in early, execute contracts with me early. It's not, and every framework is different. And again, we could spend 10 hours going down each railway of framework. Things like CMMC, less of that happens. Like, we still want to be brought in early, but at the end of the day, for us, I can't tell you what good looks like. We could point back to the rule and we could show you what we want to see, and we could tell you why we want to see it. We just can't tell you, hey, if you give us this color blue, you're good, right? But for other frameworks, there's less stringency and there's a lot more communication that can happen, right? Tim, you talked about SOC 2. I can't tell you how many times we start to talk about trust criteria, and we'll have that discussion. Hey, well, you have to have security. Okay, so we all agree on that. But do you know about the other ones? Well, we think we use this, and it's like, we've actually told people more is sometimes not better in the SOC 2 world. Because what if your report says you're doing these and you're like, I don't, and somebody reads it and they go, that's weird. It doesn't really align with your business model. So you've now added something that they would have never asked for to begin with. And then
Right.
what if next year somebody did say, hey, Tim, I do want to see privacy. You could change it up and add it to your report next year. So, and all these frameworks, you want to bring me in early because I can tell you those things. I can advise you and say, hey, look, maybe it's better to start with security, and then we can edge to confidentiality, availability, process and integrity, and privacy in year 2, or maybe we don't. Right. So, and for me, as long as scope is identified, we could put an SOW in place. Now, granted, if scope changes, we might need to pivot from there. But the biggest thing for me is I want to be in early so that I can prepare, and again, as we start talking about these frameworks, I'm booking 6 months out for CMMC. We're booking a handful of weeks out for ISO and SOC 2. For FedRAMP, we're booking a few months out, right? So like, you don't want to come to your assessor in the 11th hour and go, I'm ready to sign a contract. And it's like, great. How does 2027 look? And it's like, I need this today. And it's like, I really hope that I could have talked to you 6 months ago. So I think it's in the best interest of either the company doing it on their own, the MSP working with that company, advocating on their behalf, or any advisor or supporting arm or technology arm that has any say in this needs to be advising the client to say, you need to talk. I don't care if you have 9 months of readiness ahead of you. We've identified scope. We know what is in scope. We know what we are going to build to. Let's bring somebody like an Eric in to at least have the discussion to validate timeline, price, so that you can get a full picture price instead of my price is $1, Eric's price is a question mark, and you won't know his price until the end. Most people want to rationalize the full life cycle cost on the front end. Bring me in so I can help you do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. We hear that as well when it comes to like, we know we need to do it. What's the entire, like, what's it going to cost me per year to do this, right? How many thousands of Reddit and LinkedIn and Facebook posts are there? How much is CMMC going to cost me? Well, if you don't get all the pieces of the puzzle together, you're never going to know. And Eric, I know, like, bringing that auditor in, especially things like CMMC that's so hot right now, you're going to probably get in line with like the other 800,000 trillion million people. And you know what? If you don't get in line now, you're a little porked. Eric, you and I talked. We have been discussing doing our own internal level 2, not because we have to, but because we wanted to be prepared. And I forgo that. I gave up my spot in line so that an organization that is required could take my spot. I mean, most people aren't doing that, obviously. I'm like, we don't need it. So I'm like, why take up a spot in line and push somebody else 7 or 8 or 9 months down the road, right? But if you haven't already gotten yourself in line, put yourself in the queue, you might have to wait a year, at which point things are you contract all the things, right? November 10th, we have 10 days, right? And that stuff's going to be rolling out for CMMC. So recap, right? To go back to aligning the workflows. So first, does it apply? Is there a business case? Do I have the scope right? Then I bring the auditor in. Great. I think that's a good sort of resting point to move on to the next component that I'd like us to talk about here. And having been both on the auditor side and on the implementer side, right? This one is the one that gets me. The common missteps that just, derail, delay, and whatnot around a compliance as a GRC from an auditor perspective.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's crazy. I mean, every framework, I feel like I have my talk track of like, do you have this? No. Right. So just, I mean, super high level, and I'll rattle this off a little bit, right? SOC 2. Let's identify your trust criteria. Do you have all the appropriate documentations, policies, procedures? Is your environment fully set up? Those are immediate non-starters if those things are not identified, right? Immediate non-starters. For ISO, have you built out your ISMS yet? Is everything, all your documentation completed? Is your program complete? Yes or no? No, non-starter, right? These are not even missteps during the audit. These are missteps to not even allow you to get to the audit. CMMC, do you have the appropriate customer responsibilities matrices from your external service providers? Do you have a completed system security plan? Do you have a completed system? Yes or no. Those are non-starters. Now, then we start to talk about like during the actual assessment. It's like not, a lot of these assessments are do what you say you're doing and then prove it, validate it, document it. Right. So just because you could, and a lot of times the answer of sure we do that or no we don't is not good enough. Right. And again, some standards it might be, some standards it won't be. I hear a lot of times, oh, I'm SOC 2 compliant, I should be good for CMMC. Unfortunately, that's not true. Oh, I'm SOC 2 compliant, I don't really need to do much for ISO. Not really. They're different. They're same, but different. Right. So like doing your due diligence and making sure you're tell the auditor a story, tell the assessor, write them up. More is, a lot of people are like, but if I give you more, you might charge me more. Not true, right? If you give the assessor the ability to go to, I think the joke is always point my head where you want it to go. Don't let me point my own head and go, what's that? What's that? What's over here? Whoa, let's go down this rabbit hole. You want to give them so much that they can feel validated that you are meeting each control and in some of these instances, each objective. And again, as you do more like FedRAMP-y, GovRAMP-y, CMMC stuff, they're more granular. Versus a control that might be asked the exact same way in ISO is less granular. So the way you address it in ISO or SOC or CMMC level 1 or CMMC level 2 could be addressed and are validated differently. So you have to do your due diligence. And those are the like preconceived notions of like, oh, I've done ISO 9001 before. I'm good with CMMC. We actually didn't get ready. We're good. We're already not. And it's like, whoa. This is scary. Right. So I would say like, those are some like super basic, like missteps to even, I can't tell you how many false starts we have. I can't tell you how many, people come up and I get a call from the assessment team that goes, hey, awesome client. They brought us in a little bit late. They're not even close to being ready. Like, whoa, it's like, well, they said they were ready. It's like, yeah, but when we actually went through it, they didn't have that stuff. We can't start without it. Otherwise we're going to make judgments that are against the control. So, yeah.
So you touched on something in a bunch of your comments. It's something that we face every single day. It's something that we don't do because I have a philosophical roadblock. And you talked about the concept of cross mapping. I want to get into that, but not right now. We're going to get into that here in a couple of seconds because our team, our staff, our MSP, everybody wants cross mapping. And in my opinion, it's been bullshit. Now there is ways to deal with it, but let's just talk a little bit more about the derailing the readiness, right? When I the little bit of auditing work in the firm and the things that I did, and I've been on both sides of that, there was always 2 or 3 things that drove me insane. First, having your crap all over the place and not knowing where to find it, where to get it, how to deal with it, and getting it to an auditor for them to look at. SharePoint, OneDrive, file servers, floppy disks, zip disks, box, whatever, like crap all over the place, right? That was the first thing was, hey, I need to see this document or this evidence or this thing. And I'd always get the pushback, yeah, give me like a week. No, I'm not giving you a week to go fabricate crap. You should already have this together as part of your readiness. Eric, you mentioned a bunch of go, no-goes. Like, there's quite a few things in a checklist. I hate checklist of go, no-goes. One of them is, do you have a centralized evidence locker? Is stuff all in one place so we all know where to get it? Evidence locker. The second biggest thing that drove me nuts was policy documentation, which is why we built, I'll plug Compliance Scorecard, which is why we built OSCAL-based documentation for policies and procedures, because everything is structured, it's standardized. I, as an auditor, you as an auditor, Eric, when you see clean documentation that's all structured, same font, same color, same standardized documentation, that's going to give, I think, at least, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to give the auditor a good sense of like, wow, their documentation's in order. Maybe the rest of their program is too. It's going to give you that confidence right in the beginning. It's also going to, like, if the documentation is crap and it's different fonts and you forgot to copy paste and change company name here and it's disastrous, as an auditor, I think I'm going to feel a little bit like, their documentation is in shambles. Maybe the rest of the thing is in shambles.
No, your assessor is not out to get you. They're not out to provide gotchas. They have a job to do just like you. They're human beings just like you. They might be a specialty expert in these specific areas, but yeah, I mean, it is in human nature that, yeah, if you could, I mean, I see it all the time. I'll get comments that are like, man, that documentation is tight. You know, that's interesting, right? Oh, what's that mean? It's like, well, we don't know yet, but like, let's get started. Like, we assume this is going to be good. Like, there's real inherent nature. Now, granted, again, it doesn't mean just because you've documented it the right way, it doesn't mean that you can show it and execute it. Just because your documentation sits up in your filing cabinet and nobody touches it, doesn't mean that it's being implemented. But it's definitely a starting point. And so as much, you have to be able to prove it, show it, be able to interview to it, somebody should be able to examine it, all of it, right? And if we're talking CMMC, the assessors are told per objective, per control, when to interview, when to validate, when to examine. And as you move to these other frameworks, they have different pathways that they have to follow to validate. Are you doing what you're saying you're doing? And is it documented? And do both of them align? Or are you BSing over here? You can't show over here, or just because you could show over here, it's not documented over here. They are not one and the same. So yeah, I highly confirm and validate. Yeah, it builds some warm and fuzzies on the assessor's part, but that is again, I use this term piece of the puzzle. That is just one piece of of the full puzzle that you have to provide to get assessed. And you know, for some of these frameworks, I'm sure we'll talk about, like some are yearly, some are triannually, some are every, you know, big audit, little audit, little audit. So like you are constantly in the prove and maintain mode. It is not just get assessed. Let's wave hands and be done. You're constantly building.
And we are, you know, so we got our first quote unquote 853 FedRAMP back in 2007. You know, this is a long time ago. And looking at, you know, kind of where this has evolved over the years, you know, we would have that point in time audit firm or assessor come in, but that didn't mean it just stopped and I could ignore it for 3 more years, right? In fact, even though the actual attestation was every 3 years, triannual, we chose to bring up an auditor in on that middle year, you know, smaller scope, smaller stuff, to make sure, are we doing this right along the way? So that on year 3, when you actually came back to give us the attestation, we were doing the things along the way. We didn't have to do that. The middle year was always that self-assessment. And, you know, especially what's going to happen in CMMC, that middle year, you need to prove this shit along the way. Not just, oh, I did it today, I don't have to talk to them for 3 years. Ain't going to fly anymore.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point, because, you know, we tell people, they're like, yeah, I've hired this consultant. They got me ready. I've hired you as the assessor. And I'm just speaking CMMC right now, but yeah, yes, we've passed. We've passed. It's like, okay, well, what about self-assessment year 1, self-assessment year 2? You get back to me in year 3. You aren't doing those things. We're right back to square one. Oh, well, it's okay. We'll let, you know, our controller do that. And it's like, you want to put all the risk on your controller who has no knowledge on this. And if I'm not controller, I'm saying absolutely not. No way I'm not taking on that risk. We want a third party to come in. And whether you're bringing back in, and again, I'll be honest, it's funny, Tim, we're talking about this internally. It's like, all right, well, we do this assessment or we help company get ready. Who's going to own that year 1 assessment? There's three people fighting for it, maybe 4 people. Internal team saying, nah, not paying for this. Do it myself. It's your auditor coming back and saying like, look, I'll do your self-assessment. There's no consulting that's going to happen here. We're going to be a part of this journey. It's your readiness partner. If you've paid for them, to coming and saying, keep me, around. I'll do all this for you. And it's funny. It's like, I've made some comments internally, like we need to be very careful. Like we need to respect relationships and boundaries with partners. We need to make sure that the right person is doing this. We need to make sure that the client is ultimately taken care of. But it's just so interesting you brought up that topic, because at least in CMMC, because with ISO, you gotta come back in those intermediate years. They've put a safeguard there. For SOC, you have to see me every year. So there's no intermediate year conversation. But for CMMC, there are intermediate years, and I think people are like, whew, I don't have to think about this for 3 years. It's like, no way. That's the worst thinking.
Yeah. Any of those triannual attestations, state ramp, fed ramp, CMMC, any of those triannual things doesn't mean, oh, I got my checkup. I'm good. I don't have to exercise or eat healthy for 3 more years. I'm good. No, that doesn't work that way. So, Eric, I didn't have this on the topic list, but you brought it up, this concept of cross mapping, hey, I did my SOC 2, that makes me CMMC, right? I did my ISO, that makes me SOC 2, right? I did my blah, 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 that makes me XYZ, right? I'd love to noodle this a little bit with you, because it is something, and I'll pause here, and I say this, like, this is where I come from. As a GRC person, as a programmer, as just the way my brain works, true, false, black, white, there is no gray. If I'm doing CMMC, I'm only doing CMMC. If I want to tack on SOC 2, then I start over doing SOC 2. Like, it doesn't work that way for me. And for years, this whole concept of cross mapping has been way too subjective. Now, there's a caveat. NIST put out 8477, which is a document that talks about how you can look at frameworks and controls in those frameworks to do some kind of alignment. All these things, all these tools, all these platforms, they talk about, well, if you're 10% of the way to HIPAA, you're 80% of the way to SOC 2. What? Wait, the controls are different. So that being said, I am starting to get out of the black and white mode and a little more into the gray mode. So, Eric, I'd love to get, like, you're in that audit space. What happens if I do my 80% SOC 2? That makes me CMMC?
Here's what I'll say, right? Cross mapping is a thing to an extent. It is. Right? I mean, there are some frameworks that ask the same control, and the same evidence can be validated for both controls. So I don't want to poo-poo that. Like, there is real value in being compliant in a standard. Now, my value that I ask for is you've been through an assessment before. That means that you understand the rigor that goes into what the assessment process looks like. I actually use that as a validating question. What frameworks are you aligned to? Oh, we're ISO 9000, 20000, 27000, and CMMI. All that tells me is that you've been through a rigorous audit. But I'm not taking that as like, oh, that's awesome. You must be like way more compliant than someone else, because it goes back to scope. Are the scopes the same for your CMMC environment as your SOC 2 environment, as your ISO environment? Yes or no? If no, maybe some of the administrative and HR controls might map throughout some of these things, but your technical controls are a bit different. So yes, have you mapped to a framework? Great. That means you get what a process looks like and what we're going to ask for. And it's not going to be wacky when I go, give us this. You're going to go, I've done that before, maybe in a different facet. So I don't, again, when people tell me that they are compliant, I'm like, that is, first off, props to you, right? That is awesome. I think everybody should find something to align themselves to, even if it's CSF or CIS at its most basic form.
FTC safeguards.
Sure, exactly, right? Does it, and pick your industry and pick your standard and pick your client base and do it that way. But I just don't, I think there's a misconception in industry that's like, somebody told me that I'm SOC 2 and I'm 90% of the way there for CMMC. And it's like, my questions are the same. Or is it the same environment? No. Then the answer is no. Is it the same environment? Yes. Okay. You might have some evidence that could be rolled over, but just remember, are you looking at the objective level within CMMC or the control level within CMMC? Those are two different things, right? Just because I tell people, like, my example for CMMC is like the control might be like, is your room clean? And SOC 2 might ask you, is your room clean? And SOC 2 will allow your room to be clean if your room is clean. But CMMC says, well, hold on. Is your bed made? Is your shoes put away? Is your TV off? Well, if your TV's off, but everything else is put away, your room is not clean. So just because that control was meant for SOC 2 and they didn't look at the granularity or that CMMC looked like, your room is in theory not clean, but you've at least started cleaning your room. And that's where the value of cross mapping to me occurs. And I just want that. I want people to really think about, like, it all goes right back to scope, and scope will then dictate all your answers and next steps and movements and buying decisions. And sometimes like, and again, we keep talking about CMMC, but like, maybe your whole company can't function with the rigor that CMMC puts on it. So the rest of your company has to live in a commercial environment, and that's okay. But that is an immediate scope difference, because SOC 2 might encompass your whole company and ISO might encompass your entire company, but CMMC encompasses this little enclave that is not your whole company. Those in turn are different environments, and those in turn meet different controls differently. But again, it's like you're still making efforts to get to a finish line. It should still be celebrated, in my opinion. But it's not a 1-for-1.
I love that, because Mr. Jerk Tim always dives into bullshit. Not like I'm using the word jerk. I probably have a much stronger word that people have used. I am changing, though. The whole intent in scope, you have a much better way of saying it than Mr. A-hole Tim does. But I get it. I'm going to put the other hat on with, hey, we are doing work. We've done a self-assessment. We've identified, a framework or a list of controls that we're following. We've identified, positives and gaps. We've done work. Shouldn't that count to something else? And my answer with that is yes, and not yes, but yes, and. Great that you've done the work. Great that you've aligned to a framework and you have a process. And I think that's what, Eric, you alluded to in the beginning. Awesome. You understand how this works. Now, if you go control by objective, by control, by each nuance within a framework, and you start matching them up to one, some things can transpire to a different framework. Right? Some things can work well. That, like, you've done work. You don't have to lose my place and start over. But recognize, as you said, different scope, different boundary, different things. Like, it isn't a specific 1-to-1 correlation from the big picture. You're not going to lose your work. You're not going to lose your work.
Yeah. I just want to address the self-assessment thing too, real quick. I never invalidate somebody that says, like, I've invested real time in this. I have done a self-assessment against my company. I never go, who are you? There's real value in that. But there is real inherent bias when you are doing it on your own company, on a system you manage, on a system you've implemented, and you've bought the tools on. It's just a real, again, human behavior. You're always going to be a little easier on yourself. And we always, I'm sure you've heard the factoid in the ecosystem for CMMC, everybody's anywhere from 50 to 100 points off from what they actually are.
Yeah.
You want to bring in a third party. You want to bring in a third party no matter what standard you're doing. You want to bring in a third party that's had validated evidence, that's had validated experience with an auditing firm, no matter what that auditing firm is, whoever you're using. You want to make sure whoever you're dealing with has expertise in that framework. I see all the time people say, like, yeah, I could do CMMC consultant. I've done SOC 2 before. Not the same, right? So, like, you want to make sure whoever you're working with is educated appropriately, has relationships appropriately in industry, that has validated work. But again, it all comes back to that self-assessment topic you've brought up. Self-assessments show me that you care. self-assessments don't show me that you are compliant. And they are, when people tell me they have self-assessed, it does scare me sometimes, because I'm like, what am I going to walk into? And am I going to be the bad guy that I'm going to say, hey, look, your assessment is $1 and it's this multi-month journey, and I know you need this by February, but we can't even begin. You don't have anything. You are so far off. It's not even funny. I'm so sorry. Right. Well, but you should go here. Here's a marketplace. Go talk to people. But it's you got it. You're wrong. Right. And that is, I'll be honest, it breaks my heart sometimes, because I'm not in this space because I love this God complex. Oh, we're the assessor. We're always right. The assessors are very smart, and the assessors are following their job duties, and their job is to just follow the rules. But it is in your best interest to bring in somebody else to validate that work. And again, everything we've talked about today, scope, leveraging your puzzle pieces, making sure all is good and completed. It's going to build the warm and fuzzies for the assessor, and it is hopefully going to get you to a finish line quicker and more cost effectively. So I just wanted to bring that point up. I run into it every day. Oh, we self-assessed. I'm like, awesome.
Right.
Right.
Well, and I think, as an MSP facilitating that work for their customers, they are self-assessing, and not to diminish that work. It's important. It sets you up for success, right? So that whether it's SOC 2, whether it's any legal attested framework, that doing that work isn't done in vain, right? Getting your house and getting those things, gathering the evidence, writing the policies, governing the thing, like that work isn't done in vain. Again, if we go back to our beginning of the conversation, the workflows. Is there a business case? Does this apply? What is my scope? Bring in an auditor. From there, it's great. You know what, Eric? We've identified the trust center. We identified the things in our SOC 2 appropriately. I am realizing I am missing something. I'm not saying me, but the bigger the we realize that in the conversations with you, Eric, and the MSP, we don't have documents. We don't have this. We don't have that. So what we're going to do is spend the next 90 days getting that stuff together. And then we'll start our observation period. Right?
Yeah.
It's that idea of building the workflow, bringing the auditor in, making sure your stuff's together, and being able to recognize, like, yeah, I'm going to do the work myself for now. And when I think I'm ready, then Eric will come in and we'll talk about the actual observation periods or the actual attestations or certification, depending on what path you're going down, right? I self-assess all the time, not just in compliance, but personally, right? And that work is not done in vain. So we got about 10 minutes left here. We out of the 7 or 8 topics that we had to discuss here, we only got really into a couple of them. I want to start maybe kind of leaning a little into Eric. How can you see an MSP and the small business setting a foundation for a GRC, moving towards some kind of attestation or certification? Where do you see that intersect of the MSP, the small business, the auditing firm, and all those other components? Where do you see that related?
The MSP is the intersection point, always and forever, in my opinion. I think the MSP has a lot of current clients, future clients, prospects, all in different regulated industries. And whether you're asking the right questions or not, your end clients are dealing with regulated issues. And they're either pushing that to you, and you're now seeing it come into your footprint that, hey, I need to now get assessed and validated against these different frameworks in order to work with these clients, who then need to get assessed and validated against these frameworks to work with their clients. It's a whole spider web effect. But in my opinion, MSPs should be leading with compliance. This is like my go-to statement. You need to lead with compliance to drive back to your tech stack. At the end of the day, Some MSPs are break fix. Some MSPs do to technical implementation. Some MSPs have a security arm and do vCISO work. I think if you're not taking advantage of compliance as a whole and you're not leading with it, you should be. And you should be asking these questions when the clients come in. You'd be like, hey, I think I need to buy 2-factor authentication or whatever. It's like, why? Oh, well, we're actually going down this SOC 2 path. I think I forgot to tell you about this. It's like, you are? Who's asking you to do that? Oh, we do, work with BMW. And BMW basically said that we can't do business with them anymore unless we're SOC 2. And, oh, by the way, we might need you guys. It's like, whoa. It's like, hey, let me jump in. Let me take control of this process. I've got a GRC tool partner. I've got a readiness partner. I've got an audit partner. Let me help you control this timeline, because now I can sell you all my tools and technologies effectively and in scope. I can make a little money in the process, and I can take control of you, because there might be another MSP that's coming knocking on their door saying, I heard you need SOC 2. I'm a leading expert. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. And now you've lost that client, right? So like, I cannot tell you, I think MSPs who are taking advantage of this are in the driver's seat, and the ones that aren't, in my opinion, you're in or you're out. And if you're out, I respect it. But if you're in, you need to be all in. And that is potentially eating your own dog food, getting assessed against your own certs to show that you are compliant, building a really good team around you. But they are the intersection point, and they are, in my world, the most important partner, because they bring me in and they say, Eric, help. I need this. They need this. What do I do? Help me. I rationalize this, and I can help them make money in right reality and bring in the right players and take control of this opportunity. But more compliance is becoming ever. I mean, it is a spider web effect. Just these big dogs are asking for it, and it's flowing all the way down. No matter what framework you're in, I'm seeing it everywhere. You need to be, and you need to build. You don't want to just fly by the seat of your pants with this stuff. The worst case scenario is that you make bad decisioning for them, or bad decisions for them, or sell them incorrect things. Somebody's going to swoop in and take that from you, and that's going to be a really pissed off client. So yeah, that is a really passionate topic of mine for sure.
Yeah, we do see that flow down a lot, right? And it's not just CMMC. We see it in SOC 2 ISO. We see it in privacy, right? We see it all the way up and down the chain. In the MSP, the IT service providers, you folks listening and watching this, hopefully you are at that pivotal moment to become that trusted advisor. This is we look at it, MSPs, of having two paths. You can click the buttons, do the tools, roll out the things, clicky button work, whatever, all that. You can be the implementer, or you can be the facilitator, the leader, the trusted advisor, the go-to. And that work isn't all that hard. It's relational, right? It's not clicky buttons, configuring this, configuring that. Like, there is an entire world of implementation. But there's also in my opinion, being that trusted advisor, being that facilitator of the work, right? General contractor, if you want to call it that. If you're building a house, that GC is not doing all the labor. He's getting the right people. He's getting the Erics and the platforms and the readiness and the things. And you, as the MSP, you are in the best position to be that trusted advisor, that facilitator. And you know what? It ain't hard. And we can help you build a program around that, whatever. But that's the key, is if you are not doing this and you're not starting to think about it, and by the way, start with yourself. Some other MSP, some other trusted advisor, they're going to come in behind you and sweep you out of the way, right? So this compliance, this GRC, this strategy that you can do, I have every faith in your ability to do it. You just need that confidence in yourself and the right people to help you do that along the way. You can do it. And if you're not, someone else is gonna.
I echo that wholeheartedly.
So 5 minutes left. Eric, I'm going to pop you up full screen, talk about your key takeaway, and then I'll go after you.
Yeah, no, this has been great, Tim. I very much appreciate being a part of it. I think this discussion is important. I think people in industry, whether you're an MSP, an organization seeking cert, no matter what that cert is, whether you're dealing with the PCIs, the HIPAAs, the high trust, the GDPRs, the SOC 2s, the ISOs, the FedRAMPs, the GovRAMPs, the CMMCs. I can go acronym soup all day. If there's a future state, a current state, if there's being talked about, do the right things, build the right team, assess scope appropriately, build your buying case, build your their puzzle, and do it effectively. Do it with the right folks. Ask the right questions. Validate your partners. There's a lot of really good in industry. There are a lot of great people that do exactly what we do. And honestly, I know it sounds crazy. I love losing work to people that do great work, but it pains me to lose work to people that are slimy and selling snake oil, right? So I think if I were to have one takeaway from today, it's to build a team, it's to validate scope, and it's to ask questions, and it's to reach out to the right partners to say, like, is this something I need to accomplish? And asking your internal team, and why? Who is asking for this, and why are we doing that? So yeah, no, I this has been great, Tim, and please reach out to me any questions as it relates to this stuff. Whether it's something I can do or I can't do, I'm sure I know the right people, or I can at least guide you into the right direction. I just want to be a soundboard in the community. We all need to work together, and that's the mentality I started my career at. It's the mentality I'm going to leave my career at. And I'm very early in my career.
I love the better together mantra. That is literally why we exist here. My goal in life has always been to teach the next generation of MSPs and do that better together. But as far as today's topic and my key takeaway, so when we're thinking about aligning a GRC strategy as an MSP for our customers, today we identified, is there a business case to do it? Is there buy-in from the top? Do we have the right people, process, and maybe platform to bring this forward? Do we have the right partners in that? As an MSP, you can do this, right? It doesn't have to be hard or scary, as we talked about in the beginning. And yeah, today is Halloween. It doesn't have to be scary, right? You are well positioned to become that trusted advisor to facilitate this work alongside your customers, alongside the people, the partners, the platforms, the tools, the technology. You are in the best position to help them reduce that risk, get more compliant, and by the way, make money along the way, right? It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be scary. You are in the best position to do this compliance kind of work, this framework kind of stuff for you and your customers. And if you're not, someone's going to come in behind you and do it for you. So don't be afraid, even though it is Halloween. You've got this. Eric, where can people find you? We popped up your LinkedIn. What else can we let people know about where they can find you?
Yeah, I mean, first initial, last name at controlcase.com. Email me, my LinkedIn. I always respond. Text me, call me, tweet me, send a carrier pigeon. I get paid to answer the phone. I get paid to respond, but I'll just say, wherever you guys can find me, controlcase.com, wherever that may be, just use me as a resource. I'm happy to support.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Eric. For those our listening audience, in 2 weeks, we're going to have our good friend Max Henderson from DataStream. We're going to do a little Thanksgiving cyber insurance, tossing some gravy into the mix. So make sure you head on over to our LinkedIn page. We do these every other week. So we're looking forward to you. For all the people out there doing Halloween things, be safe, be smart, be responsible. have fun, and scare the shit out of people along the way. I'm kidding. Awesome, Eric. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the green room in a couple seconds. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Subscribe now.